What's up, guys? It's Bo here again. I want to talk about in this entry an extension of basically my previous entry, where I talked about the difference between symbolism and energy, right? And in this entry, I want to introduce to you guys the concept of light and shadow, right? And light and shadow is to do with our motivations, our kind of innate motivations, and the motivations behind our actions, right? Essentially, light is something, a light kind of motivation is a loving, connected, integrated, joyous kind of vibe. So when we do something because we love that thing, or, it brings us joy, and we really believe in that thing without any doubts, that is a light motivation. A shadow motivation is the opposite. It's when a decision is made out of fear, out of pain, out of trying to run away from something, out of deceit, essentially, to yourself or someone or other people. So something that, like, you're doing it for like a defensive reason, you could say, as well. So, in essence, a light motivation, you could say, is a positive one, and a shadow motivation is a negative one. And this is very subtle, and it plays into this difference between the axes, symbolism and energy. And a crucial point that I want to give to you guys before I carry on is that I'm not saying right or wrong. Right, I'm not saying right or wrong here. Right and wrong, like I said in the previous entry, is flexible. It depends on your perspective. There's no such thing as something that's absolutely right all the time and absolutely wrong all the time, right? It's subjective, it depends on your perspective. So I don't want to say that light motivation is right, or that shadow motivation is wrong. And another reason I don't want to say that, because it isn't true, is one thing, is because I don't want you guys to get hung up on, I don't want you guys to basically to fight yourselves, because we all have light motivations and shadow motivations. We all do things for reasons that are pure and reasons that are kind of a bit tainted, and the important thing is not to judge that, right? So that's why I'm saying it's not right or wrong, whether it's light or dark or shadow, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So I can give you a few examples, right? I've got some written down here, just to illustrate further what I mean. Essentially, although I said that light and shadow is not right or wrong, like it's not kind of good or bad, light motivations are more resourceful, generally. Shadow motivations are unresourceful. So do you feel there's a subtle energetic difference between those two ways of labeling, those two ways of judging light and shadow, right? Good and bad, like right and wrong, and resourceful and unresourceful. In the sense that you want to become aware of your shadow motivations. And then you want to go towards light motivations. But it's not because, like, you're not trying to fight yourself. Right, it's not like a resistive energy where it's like, fucking, I'm so I'm doing the shadow, like that motivation. Again, it's that mixture between thinking and being. You're kind of muddling your identity up with just this idea, So you don't want to be fighting yourself. You want to be like kind of at peace with yourself, and just when you kind of analyze these things and basically just tackle it from a space of like, okay, well, I have these things that I do because of a shadow motivation, for like a tainted reason, like a hurtful reason, and I want to kind of transform that. And again, this is about discernment as well, because that process is a logical process. It's like to become more sensitive, we must become more logical, right? It's a logical process. So yeah, so it takes a bit of objectivity, is what I'm saying. So I'll give you some examples to illustrate this further. If I can find it. Long list. Okay. So So you can do. So my first example is you can do something because you really love it. You can do something because you're passionate about it, and this love and passion isn't really involved with other people. It doesn't really have anything to do with other people. It's just like something that you personally really love and enjoy. So you could So you could kind of pursue a passion because you just really love that passion. Or the shadow version of that is that you can do something because you feel obligated to, because you feel that you have to, because not necessarily that someone is telling you that you have to do it, like you have to do this thing, but because subconsciously you feel that if you don't do that thing, you're going to fail, or you're not going to survive. It's very subtle, but you'll notice in that example that the first, light motivation feels good. You're doing it because you feel good about it, and shadow motivation, there's like this kind of niggling little feeling that like something's up, right? Another example is when you really love someone, or if you really love something, and you want that thing to be good, and if it's a person, you want that person to succeed and be happy and be everything that they want to be, right? Because you just love that person so much. And again, this doesn't have anything to do with the other person. It's not conditional. You're just doing it because you just love that person. It doesn't really matter if you are directly involved with that person. You just have these good feelings toward this person, and it then motivates you to help that person, right? That's the light motivation. The shadow motivation of that is actually something that's quite problematic in our society. Love when it's attachment. So it's love when it's conditional. It's love, we love someone because we feel deep down, we're trying to squash this feeling that we're unlovable. And so we love people in order to be loved back by them. So it's like this invisible contract between giving love and receiving love. And therein lies the deceitfulness, the kind of manipulative kind of strategy. Where it's not from a pure place. It's not from a pure place of love for the other person. It's because you secretly want something. There's an ulterior motive behind it. There's something that's not quite right, Another example is, this is a good one. When you help someone, it's related to the other one. When you help someone because you really want to help them. So, for example, if you give change to a beggar on the street because you just, I don't know, like a busker, someone who's playing an instrument, and like you do it because you just want to do it, right? Because from your love, from your connection with that person. And then there is love which is self-sacrificial, right? There is love, these are related, love and help. But when you give help in order to receive it back, so it's the same thing. When you give help because you feel that you have this idea of karma, and you feel that if you must help other people in order to receive help in return, right? So there's these key overlapping principles of light and light. Light is very free. It's loving. It's connected, and it's not clingy. It's not needy. Shadow is clingy. It's needy. It's manipulative. It's subtle. It's subtly kind of. You feel like you have to do it. So there's a bit of kind of resentment in there as well. So this is the difference between light and shadow, right? And another thing that it boils down to is whether you're doing something. This is where the connection comes in. Light is connective. When you do something for a light motivation, you're connecting to that thing fully. So you're opening up. You're opening yourself, and you're becoming one with that thing. Essentially, that's love. Essentially, it's connection. And shadow is when you are running away from something. Is when you're trying to push something away. When you're trying to resist something, right? So when you become sensitive to energy. So I advocated going towards your joy and becoming aware of your darkness, your shadow, right? When we become sensitive to energy, this kind of thing, although subtle, it's easy. It becomes easy to tell, right? It's the more we kind of work through these issues, the more kind of aware we become of the difference between those. Discernment, again, between those two things. Right. And shadow is very insidious. I kind of explain it as if it's, I describe it as if it's very kind of bad, essentially. And again, I don't want you to fall into that trap. And people don't operate from this modality out of purpose. People don't do this purposefully. Shadow motivations arise because of some inherent fear or insecurity, or some kind of impulse or trauma. Like I said in my emotional blog entry about how people act out of there is trauma behind your problem. The thing behind the thing is trauma, emotional trauma. So people don't act out of this way on purpose, and it's the same for you. So basically, all it is basically stepping back, being objective. So you have to basically become aware of where you are running from a shadow kind of motivation, when you're kind of operating from a shadow kind of motivation. But then once you've identified it, you mustn't judge it. So you mustn't kind of fight against yourself. That was the point I was trying to make. You shouldn't fight against yourself, and you must basically transform it. So this involves basically taking the shadow motivation, identifying the core kind of fears and negative emotions that are driving you. This might take a bit of digging and work, it's kind of inner child work and that kind of thing, shadow work, which I will go into detail in another entry. But we become aware of these core motivations, these core fears, and we basically take, and that fear is basically attached to something, like some trait that you have, some personality trait, some kind of quality that you have. And basically what it involves is taking that that symbolic identity, right, that trait that you have, and seeing it in a different light. So shifting along the horizontal axis of perception. So taking this trait, so for example, I'm an escapist. I'm always in my head. I'm always distracted. I'm scatterbrained. I'm not focused, right? This is negative, and it can cause a lot of issues, right? Addictions and things like that. Like this is something that's very personal to me. Like I used to be very kind of addicted to escapism, essentially. But I can take that. I can take the kind of core fear behind that, which is essentially it's like there's a fear that is saying that I'm not focused and things like that. But you can take it and then basically shift it along the axis and start to extract some positive, light-based kind of interpretations of that trait. So we're shifting along this energetic axis. So instead of seeing myself as an escapist, as scatterbrained, as lacking focus, I can think of myself instead of being imaginative, or capable of generating new ideas, or seeing things from multiple angles, augmenting reality in a way that is positive and motivational and inspirational, right? Being inspiring. So this is taking an identity, taking a trait that we've judged as bad, and basically there's exalting it into a new identity that is positive and resourceful for us, right? So that's how we basically shift from a shadow paradigm. So when we identify that we're doing certain things or we're thinking in a certain way because of shadow motivations, because of kind of unresolved issues, subconscious fears, insecurities, that kind of thing. When we've identified those things, the next step is to take those things and go along, collapse the symbolism, into one point, and then move along the energetic axis, and reframe it, transform it into something more, into something new and resourceful and positive for you. And from there, we can basically transform from a place of fear into a place of love, and that is essentially the ongoing journey of self-improvement and that kind of thing, self-empowerment. So I want you guys, I'm going to end it here, but I want you guys to basically be aware of those two things. Don't judge them when you actually, you know, uncover them, but be aware of these two motivations, light and shadow. Are you doing something out of love and connection to that thing? Unselfish love and connection? Or are you doing it because you feel obligated and you're running away from something and you feel you have to manipulate reality in order to get something that you're lacking? You know, fear or love, disconnection or connection, right? Keep that in mind. And cool. I want to give a shout out actually to there's a teacher on YouTube called Teal Swan, and she's also known as a spiritual catalyst. I'll give you a link to her channel beneath. But like, if you're interested in this kind of thing, she goes really in depth in this kind of area, light and shadow. The thing that I mentioned, shadow work, is actually something that she's a proponent of. But check out her videos if you're interested. And cool. That's this video done. Hope that was helpful, and I will see you in the next video. Peace!